I had always believed that when you love someone, the warmth between you should be enough to keep away doubts, fears, and wandering thoughts. Yet lately, my relationship with Samir had begun to feel like holding sand. No matter how much I tried to tighten my grip, something important kept slipping through. He was still tender, still thoughtful, but distant in a way that felt like he was already halfway somewhere else. And I, left behind in the silence, found myself craving connection so desperately it frightened me. The perfect storm formed quietly, an overnight family gathering at my friend Horace's house. It was supposed to be joyful, loud, full of careless laughter and familiar faces. But everything changed the moment Horace introduced his visiting cousin, Zion. Zion wasn't extraordinary for any obvious reason, no dramatic entrance, no blazing spotlight marking him as significant. Yet there was an immediate gravitation I could neither ignore nor rationalize. His confidence showed not as arrogance but as ease, his presence filling a space without demanding it. When his eyes landed on me, deep, observant, briefly lingering, it felt as though he had already read the parts of me I kept concealed, that I told myself I was simply noticing him, the way anyone notices someone new. But the awareness persisted, like a pulse under the skin. Horace asked me to help with the luggage, and Zion joined me. We walked side by side through the narrow hallway, shoulders close enough that we were sharing the same breath of air. Inside the room, we worked quietly at first, suitcases placed in corners, shirts hung carefully, shoes arranged under the bed. A shy politeness hovered between us like a curtain waiting to be drawn aside. Then he spoke. "You're Aram, right? Horace mentioned you helped him a lot with the trip planning." His voice held both warmth and curiosity. That I nodded, suddenly too aware of my posture, the texture of my shirt, the way the room felt smaller with him inside it. "We've been friends forever." It was nothing, really. He smiled, an effortless tilt of lips that seemed to light the dim room. "Well, thank you anyway." His gratitude was simple, but it landed softly, stirring an unexpected flutter in my chest. Throughout the day, small moments collected like clues of a story neither of us had admitted to starting. When everyone gathered in the living room, Zion chose the seat beside me, his knee brushing mine when he leaned forward to join a conversation. When he laughed at something I said, it sounded personal. And each time our eyes met, just a second too long, a silent question passed between us. Was he feeling it too? The uncertainty made everything sharper, the sound of his footsteps, the way he pushed his hair back using only his fingertips, the slight restlessness in his posture as if he was holding back words that would shift everything if spoken aloud. Night crept over the gathering, and families settled into their rooms. A handful of us remained awake, but even conversation grew soft and scattered. I stood to leave, ready to claim the mattress assigned to me in a small side room. As I walked away, I heard my name, Aram. I turned. Zion stood a few steps behind me, slightly hesitant now, as if he were testing the limits of familiarity. "Do you know how to give a shoulder massage?" he asked, rolling one shoulder with a wince. The long drive was murder on my back. The question should have been harmless. Completely innocent. And yet, my heart reacted like an alarm had been triggered. "A little," I replied, voice steadier than I felt. That he nodded once. "Would you help me? Just for a few minutes?" I paused. Thought of Samir. Thought of the many promises we hadn't spoken but lived through trust alone. Yet in the quiet space between thinking and responding, desire slipped in. "Sure," I heard myself say. Zion led the way to a guest room. It was dim except for a small lamp casting soft shadows on the walls. When the door clicked shut behind us, even accidentally, it sounded like a decision that he handed me a light bomb he'd taken from his bag. His back was to me now, shoulders broad, posture vulnerable. Slowly, I placed my hands on him, palms settling against warm muscle. His breath shifted, and the room's air thickened around us. "Feels good," he murmured. That I swallowed, focusing on slow movements, on the steady rhythm of touch I had no right to enjoy. Every moment stretched, deepening, daring us to acknowledge what we were both pretending wasn't there. A thought flickered, unwelcome but undeniable. This shouldn't be happening. But neither of us stopped, and somewhere between a careful press of my thumbs and a soft exhale from his lips, the line that once felt so clear began to dissolve entirely. Zion didn't speak at first. he simply breathed, slowly, as though he was trying to keep something contained. My hands continued moving across his shoulders, fingers tracing patterns I pretended had only therapeutic intent. Yet every second spent touching him only made the truth louder inside me. I could stop, but I didn't want to. Aram, he said softly, my name sounding different, warmer, waited. He tilted his head slightly to look back at me, and our eyes locked from inches away. In that gaze, there was no confusion. Only recognition that I pulled my hands back too quickly, as if the heat of him had finally become too much. We should, stop. You're fine now. My voice attempted distance, but the tremor in it betrayed everything. Zion turned, sitting fully upright, facing me. The air seemed to pulse between us, neither of us daring to move too fast. You're good at this, he said, though the compliment carried a question beneath it. Why are you shaking? I didn't respond. I couldn't. My thoughts had turned into a tangle, Samir's smile, Samir's trust, the calls that grew shorter each week, the silences that stretched like warning signs across our conversations. Being near Zion made the emptiness I had been ignoring feel undeniable. Zion noticed all of it. You look like someone who keeps too much locked inside, he murmured, his perception pierced through my defenses like a key finally turning in a stubborn lock. I tried to laugh it off. Maybe you're just tired from traveling. You're reading too much into things. No, he said, his voice steady, I'm reading exactly what's there. I felt the mattress shift as he leaned closer, his expression tender rather than bold. Can I ask you something personal? I hesitated, then nodded. Are you happy? His question cut deeper than any accusation could have. My answer caught in my throat. Happiness should have been simple, I was with someone who cared for me. But love doesn't always soothe what aches inside. Sometimes it simply highlights how far you've strayed from yourself. Zion didn't demand a reply. He just waited, letting the silence reveal what I couldn't say aloud. I think, he continued gently, you deserve to feel wanted. Seen. Not just remembered when it's convenient. The truth stung because it felt familiar. That I whispered, this is wrong. Yes, he agreed immediately, his honesty disarming. But that doesn't make the feeling disappear. His acknowledgement didn't excuse the moment, it illuminated it. We weren't two careless strangers. We were two people who knew better and still found ourselves drawn to something dangerous. Zion's hand brushed mine, not grabbing, not urging, just a soft, uncertain touch. I didn't pull away. Instead, my fingers reacted on their own, curling slightly toward him. A spark, quiet but unmistakable, leapt across that point of contact that he searched my expression, cautious and reverent. If you tell me to stop, he said, I will. Right now. The power in his offer was terrifying. Saying stop would preserve everything familiar. Saying nothing would change what came next forever. I remained silent. Zion moved closer, his forehead nearly touching mine. I could feel the warmth of his breath, hear the way his heartbeat sped up to match my own. This wasn't a reckless leap, it was a careful surrender. When his lips finally met mine, it wasn't a hurried mistake. It was slow. Deliberate. A question and an answer in unison. A soft gasp left me, part shock, part relief. All the walls I had been holding up for months crumbled beneath the realization of how starved I had been for connection, but the moment didn't dissolve into chaos. We paused, breath mingling, letting the weight of the kiss settle on us. Zion pulled slightly back, searching my eyes again. Are you okay? He asked, sincerity woven into every word. I nodded because I couldn't trust my voice. We sat there together, hearts racing, the consequences lurking like shadows around us. Yet neither of us moved away. The choice had been made. A line crossed not in haste but in acknowledgement. For a long, suspended moment, nothing existed but the two of us, and the secret now binding us together. Zion's fingers gently intertwined with mine. Whatever this is, he whispered, we'll face it. But even as the warmth of his hand steadied me, the echo of guilt already began to whisper, reminding me that what felt right in that room would feel devastating beyond it. The door remained closed. The night was still. And somewhere deep inside, I knew this was only the beginning of the cost. Morning arrived gently, with pale light spilling through the curtains and the distant sound of birds outside. The rain had stopped, leaving the air cool and sharp, the world outside washed clean. I opened my eyes slowly, unsure of what time it was, or what I might find when I turned my head. Ayan was already awake. He sat on the edge of the bed, elbows resting on his knees, staring at the floor as though lost somewhere else. His hair was messy, his shirt wrinkled, but his stillness was new, a kind of quiet I had never seen in him before. For a few seconds, I just watched him, the same way I had watched the wedding lights flicker the night before, caught between admiration and uncertainty. Then, sensing my gaze, he turned slightly. "Morning," he said. His voice was calm, maybe too calm. "Morning," I echoed. Neither of us mentioned the night. The silence between us wasn't heavy or awkward, it was careful, as though we both knew that saying the wrong thing could shatter something fragile. That he stood and stretched, glancing at the window. "Looks like the wedding's over," he said, forcing a small smile. "The world's back to normal." I wanted to believe that, to let his words carry us back to the easy friendship we'd always had. But normal felt distant, like a place we'd already left without realizing it. When he went to wash up, I sat there listening to the water run. The sound felt strangely symbolic, as if the night were being rinsed away, leaving us both clean but changed. That we joined the rest of the family for breakfast. No one noticed our quietness, everyone was too busy packing, laughing, reminiscing about the wedding. Ayan slipped easily into conversation, joking with cousins, helping load bags into the car. He looked like himself again, bright, effortless, untouchable, and yet, every time our eyes met, there was that flicker, recognition of something shared, something unspoken. On the drive home, the road stretched endlessly ahead, flanked by fields shining with morning dew. We barely spoke. The silence wasn't uncomfortable, it was filled with thought. I kept wondering if I should say something, to name what had happened, or to ask if he remembered it the way I did. But each time I opened my mouth, the words dissolved before reaching my tongue. Halfway through the journey, Ayan turned down the music and said quietly, "Last night was strange, wasn't it?" His voice was steady, but the way he gripped the steering wheel gave him away. "Yes," I said after a pause. "It was." He nodded slowly. "I don't know what it meant. He stopped himself, shaking his head with a soft laugh. "Forget it. Maybe it's better not to think too much." I wanted to agree, to let it go, but a part of me didn't want to forget. Some moments, I realized, are not meant to be understood, only remembered. That we reached home by afternoon. As he dropped me off, he smiled again, that familiar, easy smile I'd known for years. But his eyes lingered for a moment longer than usual. "Take care," he said. "You too," I replied. That he drove away, and I watched his car disappear down the road until it was gone. The emptiness that followed wasn't sadness exactly, more like the echo of a song after the last note fades. In the days that followed, we spoke less. Texts became shorter, calls more infrequent. Life filled the spaces where words didn't. Yet, whenever I thought of that night, it wasn't guilt I felt, it was a kind of gratitude. For the closeness. For the honesty of a moment that had no name. Sometimes, late at night, when the world is quiet and the rain begins again, I think of that wedding, of golden lights, laughter, and a night that changed everything without saying a word. What we shared wasn't a mistake, nor was it something that could continue. It was simply a truth, brief, fragile, and unforgettable, that taught me how complicated love can be when it lives in silence. And though life went on, a part of me always returned to that single night, not for what happened, but for what it revealed. That even in the quietest moments, the heart speaks louder than words ever can.